Inside the prison where inmates don't sleep at night, the night no one slept. Hit subscribe if you're brave enough to hear what really happens when the lights go out. The sound of rushing air filled Detective Mason Rivera's ears as he ran across the Rikers Island bridge, sirens echoing behind him. It was nearly 2 a.m. that hour when the island seemed to hold its breath, when inmates stopped pretending to sleep and officers tightened their grip on flashlights. Mason's phone had buzzed only 7 minutes earlier with a single message from an anonymous dispatcher. Inmate down, possible foul play, West Dorm, night watch compromised. Those last 3 words were what forced Mason out of bed. Night watch compromised. On Rikers, daytime was loud, tense, and packed with movement. Nighttime was something else entirely, a beast with its own heartbeat. And if night watch was compromised, it meant someone saw something they weren't supposed to, or someone did something they weren't supposed to. When Mason stepped through the intake door, the cold fluorescent lights overhead flickered like they were afraid to stay on. Officer Lena Ortiz met him halfway down the corridor, her face tight with exhaustion. "I thought you were on the mainland," she said quietly. "I was," Mason replied. "Tell me what happened." Lena exhaled. "West Dorm reported a disturbance. Inmate Reyes says he heard someone whispering through the vents, said it sounded like a warning. Minutes later, one of our officers didn't respond to his radio check-in. We found him sitting on the floor of the corridor, conscious but shaken, wouldn't talk. And the inmate? He's in holding. But Mason..." She lowered her voice. "This isn't normal, even for nights like this." Mason rubbed his forehead. "Show me the scene." They stepped into West Dorm, and the hallway swallowed them with its stale heat and, "Brennan," Mason said gently. "I'm Detective Rivera. I need to ask what happened." Brennan blinked slowly. "It wasn't supposed to be my shift," he whispered. Mason leaned closer. "What do you mean?" "I traded with Jackson. He asked last minute." Brennan's voice cracked. Someone knew I wasn't supposed to be there." Ortiz whispered to Mason. "Jackson's on sick leave this week." Mason's mind raced. "What else, Brennan? What did you hear?" Brennan hesitated. "I was doing rounds. Lights flickered. Vent above me made a clicking sound, like someone moving metal. Then a voice." He paused, chest rising sharply. A voice said, "Not him. The other one. Shift wasn't supposed to change." Mason felt a cold wave slide down his spine. This wasn't random. Someone was tracking the officers. Someone knew the schedules, even the unofficial switch-outs done at the last minute. He crouched in front of Brennan. "Did you see anyone?" "No." Brennan shook his head, eyes glassy. "Just shadows above the vent, then silence." Mason stood up slowly. "I need access to the maintenance logs for this area, crawl space included." Ortiz's expression tightened. "Maintenance hasn't done a crawl space check in months. Budget cuts." "Then someone else has been up there," Mason said. They stepped back into the hallway. A sudden clanging noise echoed down the corridor, metal hitting metal. Inmates flinched. Ortiz reached for her radio. "What was that?" Mason asked. "South side," Ortiz said, already moving. Mason followed her through a set of double doors into a narrow corridor leading to storage rooms. The air felt different here, colder, heavier. Ortiz unlocked the door to a small supply room. Inside, the light flickered. Mason scanned the shelves, mops, cleaning fluid, stacked linens. Then he froze. The vent cover in the upper corner was unscrewed, hanging slightly up.
Ortiz handed Mason a flashlight. "Search team's suiting up, but it'll take 10 minutes. "We don't have 10 minutes, Mason said. "If someone's already in the ducts, they're listening. They'll move." Ortiz nodded uncertainly. "So what are you thinking?" "I want to talk to Jackson." Ortiz blinked. "The officer on sick leave?" "He traded shifts with Brennan. If someone in the vents knew about the switch..." Mason paused. "That means they're tracking things staff think are private." Ortiz exhaled. "I'll call his supervisor." "No," Mason said. "We're going to him." The drive to Jackson's neighborhood was tense and silent. Rikers Island still glowed in Mason's rearview mirror like a floating city. Harsh lights against the dark river. Ortiz gripped the steering wheel tightly as they exited onto a narrow Queens Street. They found Jackson's building quickly, a weathered brick apartment with a flickering porch light. Ortiz knocked on the door, calling out, "Officer Jackson, this is Rikers administration." Footsteps, slow, dragging. The door cracked open, and Jackson stared at them, his eyes hollow. He wasn't injured, but he looked exhausted. Skin pale, shirt wrinkled, hands trembling slightly. "Mason Rivera," he said, recognizing him. "Did Brennan talk?" "Enough," Mason said. "I need to ask you something important. Why did you switch shifts last night?" Jackson hesitated. "Because I haven't been sleeping." Ortiz exchanged a glance with Mason. "Because of what?" Mason asked. "The vents," Jackson whispered. "The same ones Brennan heard. The same ones Reyes said were whispering." He stepped back and motioned them inside. His apartment was small but tidy, except for the living room, where blankets were piled on the floor next to the couch. Ortiz raised an eyebrow. "You're sleeping out here?" she asked. "I'm trying," Jackson said. "But it follows me." "Why?" "It follows you," Mason asked quietly. Jackson swallowed. "The tapping. I heard it every night in West Dorm for weeks. Not loud, like fingertips dragging across metal. Sometimes it sounded like someone crawling just above me. I reported it twice. Maintenance said there was nothing wrong." "But you switched shifts," Mason said. "Why?" Jackson stared at them with a haunted expression. "Because 3 days ago, I heard something I shouldn't have." Mason leaned forward. "Tell us." Jackson's voice trembled. A voice. Through the vent. Not a whisper. A clear voice. It said, "He's watching you." Ortiz froze. Jackson continued, his words shaking. "I thought it was an inmate messing around, but it wasn't coming from any cell. It was coming from the crawl space." Mason's pulse quickened. "You think someone's living up there?" Jackson didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked to his kitchen drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I didn't show this to anyone. I found it in my locker 2 nights ago." He handed it to Mason. The paper had only one line. "Shift switch noted." Ortiz's eyes widened. "How does someone in the vents know your schedule?" Jackson whispered. "Because they're watching the staff. They've been watching for months." Mason studied the handwriting. Shaky but intentional. The same style as the paper found behind the cleaning supplies. The same person had written both notes. Someone inside Rikers. Someone hidden. Mason folded the paper carefully. "Jackson, has anyone else reported this kind of message?" Jackson hesitated. "Rumors. Officers hearing footsteps overhead. Maintenance claiming someone tampered with old crawlspace panels. But no one brings it up. They don't want to be labeled paranoid." "Someone should have," Ortiz muttered. "They didn't want trouble," Jackson said. "Night shifts are already understaffed. If you report something strange, you risk getting moved to the most unpredictable dorms. It's easier to stay quiet." Mason paced the room. "Who had access to the crawl spaces in the last 6 months?" Jackson shook his head. "That's the thing. No one. Not officially." Mason's jaw clenched. Then the room fell silent. A soft sound echoed from the ceiling. Tap, 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 tap. Ortiz's eyes shot upward. "You hear that?" Jackson looked terrified. "Don't tell me it's here too." Mason steadied himself and whispered, "Stay calm." The tapping continued, rhythmic, deliberate, like someone lightly knocking on metal ductwork. Jackson grabbed his hair in both hands. No, it's not real." Mason stepped toward the hallway ceiling vent and lifted his flashlight. The metal grill was intact, but something about it felt wrong. Ortiz whispered, "Do you want to open it?" Before Mason could respond, His phone buzzed violently in his pocket. Unknown number. He opened it. A new message. You left too soon. Check West Dorm again. Another buzz. A second message. Look at the camera feed at 2:17 a.m. Mason's blood ran cold. He checked the time. It was 2:16 a.m. Jackson whispered, "What does that mean?" Mason didn't answer. He opened the Rikers camera app on his phone, an access granted only to senior investigators. Ortiz moved beside him as he typed in his credentials. The live feed loaded. West Dorm hallway. Quiet. Still. 16:32. 2:16:47 town. 2:16:55. Then 2:17:03. A faint flicker. The image glitched. Lines rolled across the screen. Then, for half a second, the frame shifted. The camera angle tilted, as if something brushed against it. Ortiz gasped. "Freeze it!" Mason paused the feed. Zoomed in. There, near the top of the frame, a dark shape in the corner. Not a person. Just an outline. A blur. Something crouched near the vent panel. Then another message appeared on Mason's phone. He's not afraid of the lights anymore. Jackson stepped back, trembling. What does that mean? Mason stared at the frozen image. It means whoever is in the crawl space isn't hiding from cameras anymore. Ortiz whispered, "Mason, is it possible this person isn't an inmate?" Mason looked at the timestamp again, 17:03. Someone had anticipated exactly when the camera glitch would happen. Someone who knew the system better than the staff did. He exhaled. "It's possible," he said. "This person was never on the inmate list at all." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mason slipped his phone into his pocket. "We need to go back," he said. "Right now." Ortiz nodded. "To West Dorm?" "No," Mason said. "To the crawl space." The man who was never on the list. The drive back to Rikers Island felt colder than before, even though the heater in Ortiz's patrol car was on full blast. Mason stared out the window, replaying the camera feed over and over in his mind. That half-second glimpse of something crouched near the vent. Not a face, not a form he could fully identify, just a blur that felt intentional, deliberate. Someone inside the crawl space had been watching the dorm, and they wanted Mason to know it. When they reached the main gate, the guard waved them through immediately, too quickly. Mason felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. Word had spread across the island already. Something was happening above the corridors, something everyone could feel but no one wanted to say aloud. Inside, the lights flickered again. The night seemed heavier. As they walked toward West Dorm, Ortiz whispered, "You think he's still up there?" Mason didn't answer. He didn't need to. The tapping had been too precise, the messages too timely. This wasn't a person merely hiding. This was someone using the facility, its vents, its darkness, its overworked staff, as an advantage. They reached the hallway outside West Dorm. Officer Brennan stood there nervously, gripping a clipboard. When he saw Mason, relief washed over his face. "Detective," Brennan said, "the crawlspace door is unlocked." Mason froze. "It's never supposed to be unlocked." "I know," Brennan whispered, "but when we checked, it was already open." Ortiz shivered slightly. "Let's see it." They turned the corner and walked toward a maintenance closet. The door stood slightly ajar, hinge squeaking when Mason pushed it open. A faint draft brushed past them, cold, recycled air flowing from above. And there it was, the crawlspace hatch, unlocked, hinges slightly loose. Someone had been here recently. Mason climbed the small ladder and pushed the hatch open. Dust swirled into the air like disturbed snow. His flashlight cut a narrow path down a long, cramped tunnel lined with metal beams and old insulation. "Stay close," Mason said, pulling himself into the crawl space. Ortiz followed. Brennan stayed below, looking like he wished he didn't exist at this moment. The crawl space was cold and unnervingly silent. The only sounds were their breaths and the soft crunch of dust beneath their knees. After 20 feet, Ortiz whispered, "Mason, look." A small pile of items lay ahead, tucked neatly against the metal wall. A water bottle, a folded blanket, a flashlight, a maintenance badge. Mason picked it up. The badge belonged to a man named Paul Maddox. Ortiz frowned. "I don't remember him." "You wouldn't," Mason said quietly. "Maddox went missing 7 years ago. Maintenance team said he never clocked out his last shift." "And they never found him?" Ortiz whispered. "No." Mason placed the badge down carefully. He now understood why the handwriting in the notes looked older, shaky, uneven. A man trapped in the vents for years would look for patterns, schedules, shifts, weaknesses in routine. He wouldn't sleep like normal people. The island's constant noise wouldn't allow it. Instead, he'd rest in fragments, staying awake when others were vulnerable. And someone living above the dorms would hear every conversation, every whisper, every keyring, every radio call. Unless... "Wait," Mason whispered. "Do you hear that?" Ortiz held her breath. A faint scraping sound echoed ahead. Slow, intentional, metal on metal. Mason pointed his flashlight down the tunnel. "He's moving." They crawled forward. The scraping stopped. Then, a soft tapping noise echoed behind them. Tap, 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 tap. Ortiz turned, shocked. "Behind us?" Mason whispered. "He's not running. He's circling." They were no longer the ones tracking him. He was tracking them. The crawl space widened slightly at an intersection where multiple vent lines converged. Insulation was torn in several spots. Old maintenance manuals were scattered like someone had been studying them. And in the center of the space, a message was carved directly into the metal surface. "You found me too late." Ortiz's breath shook. "What does that mean?" Mason was about to respond when his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He opened it. A single line. "Check the feed again." Mason froze. "Ortiz, switch to camera 12. She opened her device. "Camera 12 is West Dorm." The feed loaded. Mason's stomach dropped. There on the screen, clear as day, a figure in a maintenance uniform stepped into the hallway below. He moved calmly, almost silently, head lowered to avoid the main overhead cameras. His badge glinted faintly. Paul Maddox, missing for 7 years. Not dead, not lost. Walking through Rikers as if it belonged to him. Ortiz whispered, He's out." Maddox walked to a vent near the far wall and placed something inside. Then he stepped backward, glanced once toward the camera, though his face was shadowed, and disappeared into a utility door. "Where does that door lead?" Ortiz asked. Mason swallowed hard. "It leads to the service tunnels under the island." Brennan's voice crackled over Ortiz's radio. "We just saw someone in the lower corridor headed toward the loading bay." Mason climbed down the crawl space ladder instantly. "We need to move." Ortiz followed close behind. They sprinted down the hallway, turning corners sharply. Every officer they passed looked confused as the emergency lights flickered and buzzed overhead. When they reached the loading bay exit, Mason burst through the doors. Outside, the cold night wind cut across his face. But the bay was empty. Completely empty. Only the quiet hum of distant traffic and the soft lapping of river water broke the silence. Ortiz looked around desperately. "Where is he?" He couldn't have gotten far. Mason breathed hard, scanning every shadow, every crate, every fence. Then he saw it. On the ground, near the chain link fence, a folded piece of paper weighed down by a small rock. Mason picked it up slowly. 4 words. 4 words that ended the silence of Rikers Island forever. "I don't sleep either." Ortiz's voice trembled. "Mason, what does that mean?" He looked at the river, at the dark horizon, at the place where a missing maintenance worker had slipped out of sight for 7 long years. "It means," Mason whispered, "he's not done." If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes after this.